A man walked through the front door of a trailer in rural Alabama and did not say a word for a full minute. He just stood there, looking at LED lights running off solar panels mounted to the roof, storage bins organized under a platform bed, a fold-down workbench with tools hanging on hooks along the wall, and a kitchen counter with a propane stove that looked like it belonged in someone's actual house. The aluminum walls were lined with pallet wood planking. The floor was solid. The whole place smelled like pine and propane and fresh air coming through two double-pane windows. This man had been a neighbor at the trailer park where Marcus Washington used to live. The last time he had seen Marcus, he told people that the disabled guy from Lot 14 had finally lost his mind because Marcus had just paid $300 for a 26-foot travel trailer with no floor, no axle, and a water stain on the ceiling, shaped like a country that does not exist. But now this neighbor was standing inside that same trailer, and he could not find anything to say because the man who everyone said was crazy had built something that worked better than the trailer park unit either of them had been renting. This is the story of how Marcus built it, but it is also the story of what he survived before he picked up a single tool. Marcus Darnell Washington served 6 years in the United States Army, including 2 deployments to Afghanistan. During his second deployment in Kandahar province in 2014, an improvised explosive device detonated beneath the vehicle he was riding in. The blast killed the driver and took Marcus's left leg below the knee. He spent 14 months in military hospitals and rehabilitation facilities before being medically discharged with a 70% disability rating. That rating entitled him to $1,100 a month from the VA. In rural Alabama, where Marcus returned after discharge, that check went to rent on a single-wide trailer at $575 a month. After rent, he had $525 for food, medication, transportation, VA copays, and the prosthetic maintenance his leg required every few months. The prosthetic itself was covered, but the socket adjustments, the liner replacements, the physical therapy sessions for phantom pain that hit without warning at 2 in the morning, those costs stacked up in ways that $1,100 could not absorb. He managed for 3 years on that razor-thin margin. Then, in the spring of 2021, his landlord sold the trailer park to a development company, and every tenant received a 60-day notice to vacate. Marcus had no savings, no family in the area, and a disability that eliminated most physical labor jobs. He applied for VA housing assistance. The wait list was measured in months. He slept in his truck for the first 4 weeks. When the truck broke down and he could not afford the repair, he moved into a tent behind a church in Elmore County. That tent was his home for 9 months. But Marcus did not spend those 9 months waiting. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he took a county shuttle to the public library in Prattville and sat at the same computer terminal for hours. He was not browsing. He was building something on paper before he built it in the real world. He researched county building codes and found that Elmore County does not require permits for structures under 200 square feet that are not connected to municipal water or sewer. He printed wiring diagrams on the library's 10-cent printer. He called salvage yards and wrote phone numbers in a spiral notebook that he carried everywhere. He studied trailer restoration videos frame by frame, pausing and rewinding and sketching diagrams on notebook paper with measurements and material lists. A woman at the library who noticed him there every week asked what he was working on. He told her he was going to build a house. One problem at a time. The reason Marcus chose a travel trailer instead of a shipping container or a shed kit or anything else comes down to one material difference that changes every part of the build. Travel trailers are built on aluminum frames with aluminum skin. Aluminum does not rust. A shipping container is corrugated steel. Leave it in a field in Alabama for 3 years and the rust is already eating through the walls. Aluminum can sit in a salvage yard for a decade, and the frame rails will still be structurally sound. The skin will still hold. The problem with salvage trailers is almost never the shell. It is the floor. Water gets in through a failing roof seal or a cracked window gasket and sits on the plywood subfloor until the wood turns soft and drops through. Insurance companies total out the trailer, the hulk ends up at a salvage yard, and the aluminum shell, which is perfectly fine, sits there waiting to be cut apart for scrap. Marcus found his trailer at Hank's Auto and Salvage outside Prattville, a 1998 Fleetwood Prowler, 26 feet long. The aluminum frame rails were solid. The roof did not leak. The shell had no punctures, but 3 sections of the plywood subfloor had rotted completely through, and the remaining sections were soft enough to push a screwdriver through. The original axle had been removed. There were no tires. The junkyard owner laughed when Marcus pulled $300 in cash from an envelope and asked for a receipt. He told Marcus he was throwing money away. Then he threw in 2 sheets of damaged plywood because he felt bad taking the cash. Getting a trailer with no wheels from a junkyard to a piece of land 20 miles away is the kind of problem that stops people before they start. Marcus solved it on a Wednesday night at Mount Zion Baptist Church. He stood up during the community supper and asked if anyone had access to a flatbed. A man named Curtis volunteered his Sunday off. He brought his personal truck, and the 2 of them winched the Fleetwood onto the deck using a come-along. Marcus paid him $30 in gas money and a promise to help replace a fence line the following month. That was the first time Curtis showed up. It would not be the last. Before the trailer arrived, Marcus had already secured the land. He had knocked on doors along County Road 29 until he found a retired cotton farmer named Earl who owned 11 acres that had gone fallow after his wife passed and his knees gave out. The county had been sending notices about overgrown brush along the road frontage. His children lived in Birmingham and Atlanta and visited twice a year at most. Marcus offered a simple trade. He would clear the brush, maintain the road frontage, check on Earl's house during storms, and handle small repairs. In exchange, Earl would let him place his trailer on 2 acres at the back of the property, out of sight from the road, with access to an outdoor water spigot and an electrical outlet on the barn. They shook hands. No lease, no lawyers. The subfloor rebuild is where Marcus's build diverges from anything involving a shipping container or a prefabricated structure because he was not modifying a sealed box. He was rebuilding the skeleton of a home from the inside out. He needed lumber, and he found it at a demolition site on the south end of Prattville, where a crew was tearing down a 1960s ranch house. The foreman told him he could take whatever framing lumber he wanted from the debris pile as long as he loaded it himself. Marcus spent a full day pulling 2x4s and 2x6s from the wreckage, checking each one for rot and straightness, and stacking them in the bed of Curtis's truck. Curtis had shown up without being asked. He said he did not have anything better to do on a Saturday. The subfloor went down in sections over 3 weekends. Marcus cut each piece with a circular saw borrowed from the church tool shed, measured against the aluminum frame rails, and screwed them into place with deck screws he bought for $12 at a hardware store. But here is the part that nobody talks about when they describe builds like this. Marcus was doing this work on one leg and a prosthetic that did not fit right. Kneeling on a trailer floor with a prosthetic socket grinding against scar tissue is the kind of pain that makes you want to quit before lunch. So Marcus built himself a solution. He took a piece of plywood, screwed 4 caster wheels from a thrift store to the bottom, and made a low rolling platform that let him move across the floor without standing and kneeling repeatedly. That platform cost him $6 in caster wheels. It saved him weeks of pain and probably saved the entire project, because without it, the physical toll of the subfloor alone might have ended things. With the floor solid, the next problem was turning an aluminum shell into something a person could actually survive inside through an Alabama summer and winter. Uninsulated aluminum is brutal in both directions. Summer pushes interior temperatures past 130 degrees, winter drops into the 20s, and the bare aluminum radiates cold inward while condensation forms on every surface. Marcus needed to insulate the ceiling and walls, but professional spray foam for a 26-foot trailer would cost between $800 and $1,500. He solved it the same way he solved everything during this build. He asked around. Through a conversation at the VA clinic in Montgomery, he learned that insulation contractors discard partially used cans of spray foam after every residential job. A single attic job generates 3 to 5 cans that cannot be resold once opened. Over 6 weeks, Marcus visited 4 contractors in the Prattville and Montgomery area and collected enough discarded partial cans to foam the entire ceiling and upper wall sections. The lower walls he covered with rigid foam board, salvaged from a kitchen renovation dumpster, cut with a utility knife, and glued to the aluminum with construction adhesive, then finished with thin pallet wood strips for a clean interior surface. But insulation alone does not solve the moisture problem that kills amateur trailer conversions. When warm air hits cold aluminum, condensation forms and mold follows within weeks. Marcus installed a vapor barrier before the foam board went up, 6mm plastic sheeting stapled to the interior framing. He bought a roll at a hardware store for $16. 3 years later, there is 0 mold inside that trailer. $16 solved a problem that nobody thinks about until their walls are covered in black spots and their lungs start hurting. The windows came from the Habitat for Humanity Restore in Montgomery. 2 double-pane residential units, $8 each. Marcus cut the openings in the aluminum shell with an angle grinder borrowed from the church tool shed, bracing himself against the frame with his good leg, while the grinder threw sparks across the red Alabama clay. He wore safety glasses and stuffed cotton balls in his ears. The front door opening needed to be widened by 6 inches to accept a standard exterior door from the same restore, $15. Water comes from the sky and from Earl's outdoor spigot. Marcus installed aluminum gutter sections along both long sides of the trailer roof, angling them toward 2 55-gallon food-grade plastic drums sitting on stacked cinder blocks at the rear. The drums came free from a commercial bakery outside Montgomery that was replacing its syrup storage tanks. Alabama gets about 53 inches of rain per year. The trailer roof captures enough to supply 1 person when supplemented by the spigot. Marcus purifies the rainwater with unscented household bleach, 8 drops per gallon, and lets it sit for 30 minutes before drinking. That costs about $4 a year. Electricity comes from solar panels that no commercial installer would put on a customer's roof. Solar companies across central Alabama pull damaged panels constantly because of storms, hail, and warranty upgrades. A panel operating at 50 or 60% of its rated output is worthless to a company guaranteeing full performance. But 180 watts from a damaged 300-watt panel is more than enough to charge batteries, run LED lights, charge a phone, and power a fan. Marcus collected 3 panels from 2 companies in the Montgomery area. Both gave them away because disposing of them actually costs money. He mounted them on a wooden frame angled south, braced against the trailer roof with lag bolts and scrap angle iron. The battery bank uses 2 deep cycle marine batteries, not car batteries. Marcus specifically chose marine batteries because they are designed to be discharged and recharged repeatedly, which is exactly what an off-grid solar system demands. Car batteries deliver a burst of power to start an engine. They are not built for slow, steady drain. Marcus found his at an auto salvage yard near Wetumpka for $20 each. The charge controller costs $32 from an online retailer shipped to the Prattville post office. He learned the wiring sequence from a YouTube series on 12-volt solar that he watched at the library, drawing the diagrams in his spiral notebook and taping them to the trailer wall like blueprints. The system runs 5 LED light strips, a USB charging station, a 12-volt fan, and a small radio. It cannot run an air conditioner or a refrigerator, but it provides light after dark, keeps devices charged, and runs the fan that makes Alabama's summer nights bearable. Cooking runs on a 2-burner propane camp stove mounted on a plywood counter against the front wall. A 20-pound propane tank costs $14 to refill and lasts about 5 weeks. Annual fuel cost comes to around $145. He cooks inside during rain and outside under a welded steel awning during warm months. Curtis, who turned out to be a decent welder in addition to everything else, built the awning from scrap angle iron and a sheet of corrugated roofing metal and welded it directly to the trailer frame. That was the 3rd time Curtis showed up to help without being asked. There would be more. The total cost of the entire build, including the trailer, transport fuel, all lumber and insulation, hardware, solar components, propane, windows, doors, the charge controller, the vapor barrier, and every miscellaneous purchase across 7 months of work came to $487. Marcus covered the first $300 from money he had saved by cutting his food budget to 1 meal a day for 4 months. The remaining $187 came from his VA check over the construction period. But here is where Marcus's story goes somewhere that a simple build video does not. The rear section of the trailer has a fold-down workbench built from a piece of plywood on heavy-duty hinges. When that workbench comes down, it becomes a repair station. Marcus started fixing small engines for neighbors along County Road 29, lawnmowers, chainsaws, weed trimmers, the kind of equipment that rural Alabama runs on and that breaks down constantly. He learned engine repair in the Army, and the skills transferred directly. The work brings in between $200 and $400 a month, depending on the season. That income, combined with his VA check, means Marcus now saves money every month. He opened an account at a credit union in Prattville. He is saving for a permanent concrete foundation and a larger structure he plans to build on the same 2 acres with Earl's blessing. Earl comes by most weekday mornings now. The retired cotton farmer and the disabled veteran sit on a covered porch that Marcus built from pressure-treated posts, salvaged from a fence replacement project down the road, and corrugated roofing panels donated by a local hardware store owner who heard about the build from Curtis. What started as a handshake arrangement between a man who needed his land maintained and a man who needed somewhere to put a trailer has turned into something that looks like family. Marcus drives Earl to doctor appointments in Montgomery, picks up his prescriptions, and sits with him most evenings while the sun drops behind the fallow cotton fields. Earl's children have met Marcus. They send him gift cards at Christmas. A Veterans Affairs social worker in Montgomery County has documented 4 separate veterans living in converted trailers on private land across rural Alabama with informal land arrangements. Each one independently discovered the same salvage pipelines, the same building code thresholds, and the same material sourcing methods. The knowledge moves the way it has always moved among people who have served. Through Veterans Affairs waiting rooms where someone sketches a wiring diagram on the back of an appointment slip. Through church suppers where a woman mentions she knows a guy who can show you how to wire solar panels that companies threw away. Through food pantry lines where a man says his buddy built a house from a trailer that a junkyard owner laughed about selling. This works in rural Alabama for reasons that do not exist in cities. Available land with willing owners, relaxed code enforcement, access to industrial and agricultural waste streams that produce free building materials, and neighbors who show up with a flatbed instead of calling an inspector. Marcus does not waste time debating whether his home is a housing solution or an indictment of a system that sent him to war and could not keep a roof over his head when he came back. He built what he needed with what was available. He wakes up every morning in a home that nobody can take from him because he built every inch of it himself on one leg with borrowed tools from materials that everyone else threw away. And the man who the junkyard owner laughed at, the man whose neighbor called crazy, the man who spent 9 months in a tent behind a church, he sleeps every night behind a locking steel security door in a home where the lights run on damaged solar panels and the water falls from the sky into drums. A bakery did not need any more. If resourcefulness like this matters to you, subscribing helps more people find this video. And the video on the screen right now documents a completely different survival build with methods every bit as creative as what Marcus pulled off. Click it and keep going.